There we go. I always wait for the voice. So, good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming along today. So, just a quick kind of hello and welcome from us. So, for anyone that doesn't know me, my name's Jason. I'm one of the Digital Inclusion Development Officers here at SCVO, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Catherine. Catherine, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Jason's colleague. I'm an Assistant Digital Development Officer at SCVO. Nice to see you all.
Thanks, Catherine. So for anyone that doesn't know SCVO, we are the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations. So we're the membership body for Scotland's voluntary sector, so charities, social enterprises, and people doing good. Catherine and I work in the digital inclusion team at SCVO. So SCVO Digital is there to work with our sector and beyond to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to engage with digital in a way that they choose. So we believe that digital inclusion is everybody's responsibility. And as part of that, it's our responsibility to kind of share those messages and break down some of that understanding around what is digital inclusion. And that's what we're here to do today. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about creating and embedding digital champions. And as you'll see as we go through, digital champions are a very important element of the digital inclusion journey. So just a couple of notes about the format for today. It's a kind of super quick webinar, just covering off those basic points, and there'll be time at the end for questions and answers and a little bit of discussion. So there's going to be a little bit of talking from me to begin with, and then I will stop so that we can hear you talk after a while. We are recording the webinar today, but don't worry, all you'll see is my face and the slides, and we'll stop recording when the question and answers come up. So we've got that kind of space to have that discussion. But if you do have any thoughts or questions or observations as we go through, please feel free to stick them in the chat. Catherine will keep an eye on that and we can come back to them at the end. But first things first, I'm really interested to know who's here. So using that Zoom chat, again, if you want to drop your name, your organization, and why you're here in the chat, that would be fantastic. We'd love to know who's in the room. And just as you do that, a little bit about what we're hoping to cover today. So today is really about understanding what digital champions are and the kind of work that they do, the different kind of digital champions that you get and how that might fit within your organization. But then we also want to talk about some of that more practical stuff. So how do we identify and recruit digital champions? What's the best way to do that? And what are the kind of things that you think about when you're doing that? But then also, really, really importantly, how do we support them and embed them within our organization? So what are the kinds of things that we need to think about when we have digital champions and we need to support them as they work with our service users or our staff and volunteers, the people that they're teaching to be better with digital. So first things first is, what is a digital champion? So a lot of you might be familiar with this terminology, or it might be new to some of you. But the most important thing to know about digital champions is it is anyone that helps somebody to get online. So thinking about that from your own perspective and your own point of view, if you've ever helped someone with a digital ask or a digital query, you've done digital champion work. So thinking about, is it helping Granny get an email address, or have you helped a pal recover a lost password? That is, in essence, digital champion work. So it's that really important understanding that it's anyone that helps somebody to get online. But thinking about what a digital champion is as well, it's someone that has that good digital skills and confidence. But by that, we don't mean someone that is technically proficient or is an IT guru. What we mean is someone that can effectively fulfill what we call essential digital skills, but also have the confidence and knowledge to teach that to other people. It's also someone that understands the importance of digital inclusion. And we don't necessarily mean that they understand all of the ins and outs, but it's someone that knows why digital inclusion is important. So why is it important to support people online? What are the benefits of digital? But also, what are some of the barriers that stop people getting online? So conversations around motivation and confidence. Understanding what it is that's stopping the learner from getting online is a really crucial part of being a digital champion. But most importantly, a digital champion is someone that is good with people. So it's all about being able to understand what somebody wants to learn, what their barriers are, how to communicate with them. It's someone that is confident and comfortable to sit next to somebody and teach them how to do different things. So again, it's not about that IT proficiency. It's not about being trained in IT. It's just about having the people skills. Digital inclusion is about people, and hopefully that will become clear as we kind of move through today's webinar. But there are different types of digital champion. They all do similar work, but it's important to recognize that different digital champions work in slightly different ways or with slightly different people. So I thought it'd be useful just to kind of break down what we would consider the kind of 4 main types of digital champion. So first up, we have volunteer digital champions. So these are people that usually work in community settings or for voluntary organizations. So these are the kind of digital champions that you might find at your local community cafe, for example, or if you set up a digital inclusion program in a community. It's the kind of people that volunteer, that come along and help people to learn and improve their digital skills. At the other end of the spectrum, I guess, we've got professional digital champions. So those are the kind of people that do this work as a job. So that means that they are paid to deliver this service, and that's either for people individually or for organizations at a larger level. So for example, if you are a digital inclusion officer at a charity or local authority, chances are you're a professional digital champion. So you can put that on your CV. The third type of digital champion is what we refer to as an embedded digital champion. And this is a model that we quite like and we promote a lot. And we'll get into a little bit more detail around this as we go through today. But embedded digital champions tend to be those frontline people-facing staff. So these are the kinds of digital champions that help people to get online as part of a service that they're already delivering. So think about that from the perspective of, for example, a citizens advice bureau. So a benefits advisor there who also supports their client to get online. So recognizes that perhaps their client doesn't have an email address and helps them to do that. That's an embedded digital champion. That's someone who already has that trusted relationship with a learner and can use that to support them to get online. And lastly, we have work-based digital champions. So these are the people with, I guess, a more specific focus. So for example, if you as an organization are trying to introduce a new platform or a new type of software, like a new HR platform, for example, your work-based digital champion is somebody that supports other staff to learn how to use that specific piece of software. It's really about those skills for the kind of job or the kind of role or task that they need. So those are our 4 different types of digital champions. What you'll recognize is they're all doing the same thing. They're all helping people to improve their digital confidence and capacity, and they're doing it with that kind of people focus. And that's the really key thing to remember about digital champions. But just off the back of thinking about what digital champions are, I would be really interested to get a sense from you about what you think the key attributes of a digital champion are. So just using that Zoom chat again, what do we think are those key qualities of somebody that is a digital champion? Based on kind of what you've just heard, what do you think are some of the key adjectives or qualities? Maybe 2 or 3 just in the chat there. And just straight up, seeing patience and kindness, absolutely, respect and creativity. So having those people skills and being able to talk to people and go at a pace that works for them, absolutely. I see Heather there with good listening skills, and that's really important as well, because you need to know what it is that this person wants to learn. Patience and respect, absolutely, a lot of patience. So I'm getting that maybe a lot of you have done this kind of work before and recognize how important patience is when you're upskilling. 100%, absolutely. Interesting from Cozy there, basic human rights approach and personable, absolutely. So it seems like we've all got a really good understanding of the type of person that a digital champion should be. So that's fantastic. That puts us in a really strong starting position. So having thought a little bit about that, understanding what a digital champion is and the kind of work that they do, The next thing is really thinking about how do you identify and recruit those people within your organization or your community. So identifying and recruiting digital champions is the first step towards success. It's the first step towards developing a really good digital inclusion program. We've worked with organizations and digital champions for quite a long time now. And over that time, we've kind of distilled some of that learning and understood what it is that you have to be aware of and the kind of questions that you have to ask when you're developing this kind of work. So this is kind of our top tips for identifying and recruiting digital champions. It's the things that you have to think about. And first things first is really, what kind of people are you looking for? So thinking back to what we've just discussed, those key attributes, do you know people in your organization that are like that are patient, that are kind, that are good communicators? Are they the kind of people that you want to include in this program? And it's really important to outline the skills and qualities that you're looking for. It's like a job advert, for example. So when we put job adverts out, we talk about the kind of people we want because we have a certain culture in our organizations. It's the same thing. You want them to be good communicators, you want them to be able to listen. And if you know people like that in your organization, then you're already off to a good start. The second thing to think about is, what is it that you need them to do? So thinking about the different types of digital champions that we talked about, those 4 different models, that's going to help you identify what kind of DC that you need. So the kinds of work that you're doing. So for example, we talked a little bit about work-based digital champions. So is it that you're trying to introduce a new software or platform into your organization? Or is it that you've started a community project and you want members of the community to get involved and share their knowledge? That's when you think about what kind of digital champion that you want based on what you want them to do. The third question there is, who do you want them to support? So knowing who your digital champions are going to be working with is a really important aspect for their participation. So who are they going to be supporting, and do those relationships already exist? So remember that digital inclusion works best when you've got those trusted relationships between people. So I'm going to go back to that example of a citizens advice bureau, someone that's already working with a client who knows them, who understands maybe some of their issues, some of their barriers, but also some of their motivations. An embedded model is really key there because you've got that trust already. So knowing who you want them to support is a really great way to think about how you're going to identify and recruit digital champions. Some more practical things to think about are how are you going to engage in terms of recruiting digital champions? So often organizations tell us, and we know that this is the hardest part. So is it going to be an open call, for example, or are you going to specifically target staff that you think are going to be good at this? Thinking about the different ways that you can talk about the project and make it exciting is going to attract the right kind of people as well. So that kind of leads us on to that next question there in terms of what's in it for them. So how are you going to sell the concept of being a digital champion? And remember, it should be rewarding. So it shouldn't just be another task for your staff or volunteers. It shouldn't be something that's kind of tacked on to the work that they're already doing. Making it kind of rewarding and exciting and worthwhile is really key here. So a couple of ways that you can think about that is perhaps incentivizing it. That can help. So if you're in the position to attach resource to it, can you pay them slightly extra for this work? Or perhaps it's bigger than that. So we know that people get involved in this kind of work because they want to feel a part of something bigger. So you can help staff to understand, staff or volunteers, whoever it is that you're recruiting, help them to understand how big a problem digital exclusion is in Scotland and how important their role as a digital champion is going to be in combating that. So making it rewarding, making it worthwhile, that kind of warm, fuzzy feeling is sometimes enough for some people. And lastly there, a really important point that we sometimes overlook is, does your culture help? So does your organization have a culture that encourages that participation and peer support? It's going to be really hard for you if you're an organization to try and force that if that culture isn't already there. So I would definitely consider that as something quite fundamental when we're talking about recruiting digital champions. If you don't have the kind of culture that is based around peer support and work, are you going to think differently about the type of digital champion you need? So is a work-based digital champion necessarily going to work here, or are you going to look at a more professional model? What is it that you're going to do to support the people that need to learn based on the culture you have as an organization? So that's really kind of our top tips around how you identify and recruit people. The important thing to remember is each organization and each project and each system is different. So I can't give you a play-by-play thing of how you're going to do it for your organization. These are things that you need to think about before you start this process. But assuming all of that went well, there's a lot of training and support that is available out there for organizations. So thinking about how you can develop their skills and how you can support them to understand how they can help their learners. A lot of that exists and is out there, and we're all here to support. So Shona, who was speaking earlier, is from the More Collective. There are training delivery partners on digital champion training, and they offer that training currently through the Connect in Scotland programme. So you can speak to myself, or you can speak to Shona about that if that's something you're interested in. But in terms of that kind of practical support as well, outside of training, SCVO offer a lot of how-to guides. These are hosted on our website, and they offer a range of really practical walkthroughs in terms of designing good digital inclusion programs and thinking about how you're going to engage your learners. Another offer of support, which is in the pipeline, not quite launched yet, is our learner pathway. So this will be launched soon, and it is effectively a resource hub for helping people to get to grips with the internet. So on there, you'll find, once it's launched, a really great, well-curated list of resources that can help digital champions to work with their learners based on what we call the hook. So what is it that's interesting them to get online? Is it nature? Is it photography? Is it art? Is it creativity? There's lots of resources on there, but like I say, we'll be launching that soon. And lastly, we at SCVO Digital are always available to talk about the best practice in digital inclusion as well. So always free for a conversation to talk about digital champions and how you can support and embed them across your organization. But just on that point as well, so say you are now in a position where you've identified and recruited and you've trained them and they are ready to leap into action. How are you going to then embed that across your organization and support those people as they go? And this is a really crucial thing. It's something that we at SCVO, and I know the guys at More Collective are really passionate about as well, is offering that support for digital champions as they do this kind of work. So again, it's that understanding and knowledge that we've built over a few years now, and distilling that and helping you think about the kinds of things that you can do to support digital champions here. So the first thing there is start small and work your way up. So embedding a new program of work, and it doesn't matter what that is or the type of work that it is, takes time. What we would suggest is that you start with a small cohort and see what works before launching something big. So it's kind of like that lighthouse approach, right? So you aim for 20% to begin with, and then hope that that kind of widens out across the organization. It's really about understanding what works well with a small cohort before taking it bigger. So in an organization, maybe that's an individual department first before you take it out across the rest of the organization. Or in a community, maybe it's a specific group within a community before you take it out wider. Understanding kind of what works and what your digital champions are comfortable with is going to make your program much more sustainable and embedded. The second point there is around iteration. So iterate and put digital champions at the heart of design and delivery. So like I said, nothing is perfect first time, and it's really, really important that you're flexible and adaptable with the support that you provide. So thinking about that, it's really important that digital champions are involved with the process as it evolves. So giving them that safe space to kind of talk about what's working and what's not working, and feeding back is really, really crucial. And one way you can do that is hosting what we call retrospectives. So just taking half an hour, 45 minutes to sit down together and talk about what's working, what's not working, and what are we going to change moving forward is a great way to run a program like this to make sure that it's more sustainable and gets embedded as you move. Thirdly there, a phrase that we love at SCVO Digital is motivate downwards and agitate upwards. So by that, we mean be in a position to support the frontline staff, for example, that are supporting learners. So how are you going to motivate them and get them to get really passionate and excited about the work so that it's embedded in their everyday activities? But also, how are you going to agitate upwards? So is the senior leadership of your organization, whether that's your chief exec or whether that's the management suite or whether that's your board, how are they supporting this work? Are they bought in? Getting buy-in from senior management and senior leadership is the best way to make sure that any kind of work is embedded and sustainable. I think that's a really important point to remember and think about as you develop this. Don't be an island within your organization. Talk to everybody at every level about this kind of work. Thinking more about how we can support those digital champions. One thing that works really well within organizations, specifically bigger organizations, is creating a network or community for your digital champions. So peer support is absolutely crucial for success. And I think we probably all work the same way. We need our colleagues and we need our pals or whoever to kind of vent and share and work with. So how are you going to help your digital champions communicate with each other and work together? So fostering that culture of collaboration is going to help them to share problems and solutions, and in the long term, make this a much more sustainable and embedded program. So if you give them that space and that community to share with each other what works, what doesn't work, they're gonna find much more, not necessarily universal solutions, but solutions that work for similar problems. Remember, the problems that they're facing with their learners are probably going to be similar. So it's great to give them that opportunity to share the solutions that they find and what works. The next one there says L&D, not IT. And what I mean by that is it's really important to think about this work from a learning and development perspective rather than an IT perspective. So like I said in the beginning, remember this work is about people, not computers. So some of the best digital champion programs are really about focusing on personal and skills development rather than efficiency and technology. And that goes both for your digital champions and your learners. So for your learners, it's about how they are developing their digital skills. It's about how they're moving forward within that specific space. But it's also for your digital champions. It's learning and development for them as well. It's how they support their colleagues. It's how they support the people that they're working with. We say there as well that wider implications are key. So for all of us within a sector where we work with people, really important to remember we often get more than we bargained for. So anyone that's been in a position where you're working with a client or a service user is that you often get their life story. And that's one of the best things about working in a sector like this. However, there is a downside to that. So it's really important to think about how you incorporate things like safeguarding and mental health awareness and health and safety as well into the support that you offer. So how are you going to help your digital champions be ready and supported to face what might come up? What are the processes involved there and how are you going to support that? And lastly, I think if there's two things I want you to take away from today, it's about digital champions and digital inclusion work is about people. But secondly, it's this. Remember to celebrate, reward, and thank. So being a digital champion is supposed to be rewarding. It's not just about another task for staff, okay? So it's about how are you going to celebrate the achievements of the digital champions that are putting their time towards this? How are you going to reward and thank them for that work? And again, it's about thinking what is within the ability and the confines of you as an organization or as a service. So is it perhaps a big event for all the volunteers that put all their time into supporting learners across the community? Or is it something less than that? Is it something smaller than that? Is it a one-to-one, regular one-to-one, where you're feeding back and giving them that encouragement and support and motivation? Celebrating digital champions is so important because digital inclusion is everybody's responsibility. It takes people and it takes people doing this kind of work to make sure that this work gets done. So we can't reduce digital exclusion in Scotland without people. So how are we going to celebrate them? How are we going to make it worth their while? How are we going to make sure that they know the work that they're doing is valued? So that's definitely one of the key takeaways for today, is celebrate your digital champions. That's the kind of whistle-stop tour in terms of how we embed and support this work. A lot of it is common sense in terms of how you would treat your staff and volunteers anyway. It's about putting those support mechanisms in place and remembering that they're doing this for a reason. They're doing this for a good reason, and that we need to support and appreciate that. But just kind of as we move towards the end, I wanted to highlight a case study that I really like. And actually, this case study is from 2020, so it's 3 years old now, but a lot of the lessons here still stand. And that is Clackmannanshire Third Sector Interface. So what Clackmannanshire TSI did was understood the importance of enabling staff to kind of weave that digital inclusion support throughout their work. What they did was develop an embedded digital champions program. So Shona might remember this, they accessed training via us at SCVO and More Collective. And what this did was give their frontline staff a really enhanced understanding of the importance of digital inclusion, but also the importance of building confidence in digital with the people that they were working with. So the group of people that they were working with was primarily people that were claiming benefits. So the digital champion training that they accessed meant that issues like clients not having an email address could be challenged. So rather than finding a way to work around that and doing something that would not necessarily upskill the individual, the staff then had the confidence to say to the person they were working with, well, actually, I can show you how to do that. So these kind of digital nudges, these recognizing when people have an opportunity to upskill, are really, really important in terms of how digital skills are built. And it's also a really crucial part of what being a digital champion is. It's recognizing when there's an appropriate opportunity to upskill somebody digitally. But a really key part of this is that the leadership of the TSI, the Third Sector Interface, had that awareness and passion for digital. So this is a good example of that golden thread of digital inclusion throughout an organization to support people that need it most. So the chief exec at the TSI really understood the issues and really wanted to invest and support the end user to get that. And the best way to do that was to embed digital skills support through those frontline workers. And this is a great example of somebody that understands that digital inclusion is everybody's responsibility. That if you have that golden thread through an organization, from the chief exec to the frontline worker, then the impact that you're going to have is going to be so much stronger. So that's the whistle-stop tour of how you can create and embed digital champions within your organization or service. And I guess the key question is, well, what are we going to do next? So there are lots of options. Once you've understood what a digital champion is, how you might recruit one, how you can then support them, where are we going to start with all this? So here are some things that you can do. So first things first, have a chat with us about accessing the tailored digital inclusion support that we offer. So our colleagues Darren and Siobhan offer fantastic packages of support, which include things like developing and embedding digital champions programs. That's completely free to access, and we'd be happy to have a conversation around that. Secondly, going back to the digital champions training provided by More Collective that I mentioned earlier, that's going to give your team the best possible head start on helping people by understanding what it means to be a digital champion and how to do that. But thirdly, having a think about how you can put the wheels in motion. So after all of this, after I've chucked all this information at you, there's lots spinning about in your head. Jot it down on a piece of paper. It doesn't matter what it looks like at the minute, but have a think about, well, actually, that point there about how we celebrate digital champions really stuck with me. Or maybe it's further back than that. Maybe it's thinking about, right, what do I need my end users or my learners to learn? And how am I going to build a package of support or a digital champions program based on that? But we'd really love to know what, if anything, you're going to do about digital champions. So please feel free to stick in the chat just now what your next step is. Is there anything that you need support with? Are you lost and confused? What are you going to do next? Stick it in the Zoom chat and we can have a little chat about that afterwards. But as you may or may not know, this is part of a wider series of masterclasses that we're running at SCVO Digital around digital inclusion. And these are really just to support the sector and anyone that's interested in understanding a little bit more about the issues and elements of what digital inclusion means and looks like. So coming up, we've got next week, Bringing Your Organization With You, and that is all about how we bring staff and volunteers with us on a digital inclusion journey. So how do you bring the kind of the main cogs of your organization with you when we want to talk about digital inclusion? We've also got chatting with senior leaders about digital inclusion. So how do you have that conversation with your trustees or your chief execs or whoever the senior management of your organization about prioritizing and making digital inclusion important? And last up in September, we have Doing Digital Inclusion with Limited Resources. So we know that we're in the midst of a cost of living crisis. We're also in the midst of a running cost crisis, and money is harder than ever to come by. So how can we be a little bit more creative and collaborative in how we do digital inclusion? So you can book all of those events at scvo.scot/events, but don't worry, we'll send out the links to all of them after this as well as part of the email that you'll all get. But that brings us quite nicely to the end. So just before I stop talking and let you guys talk, if you could scan that QR code and fill in this short feedback survey, that would be massively appreciated, just to help us know what can we do better, what can we change, did you enjoy, that kind of thing. But what I am going to do just now is stop recording and shut up. But thank you all so much for listening to me, and I hope it was helpful.